Hello, and welcome back to Acting Like an Actor. I'm your host, Sophie Doran Collins, and this is a podcast where we interview actors and creatives who are amazing at their craft and seem like they have it all together, yet often still feel like they have no idea what they're doing, because this business is weird and there are no rules, so let's learn from them. This week we have actor and photographer Bernard Timmons II. Bernard is known for his work on films such as the Seance, games Metaxu, and Forensicators. We chat about the different levels of being an actor, how to deal with the slow seasons, and how Bernard almost didn't take a role that ended up changing his life. If you're curious about the different levels of being an actor, this episode is for you. If you're struggling with the slow season in our business, aka right now, this episode is for you. If you're not taking roles because you think they are below you, this episode is for you. If you're a horror movie fiend, this episode is for you. Lego.
Are you rich?
Are you famous?
What have you been on?
I don't really recognize you, and neither does my mom.
Can you laugh?
Can you cry on command?
I mean, you said you were an actor, man.
What's your backup plan? Is it shattered?
Dude, I'm just acting like an actor.
Okay, so something I've recently started doing is always telling everybody how I meet my guests, because I feel like it's always a funny story. So, Bernard, do you want to tell them where we met? Because I feel like this leads into your journey a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. So, can I did we not know each other prior to that Zoom meeting?
No, I don't think so.
So, I want to tell that story first.
Okay.
So, we both, as young actors trying to just learn and absorb all that we can and be sponges to knowledge, we were in a casting Zoom, casting informational Zoom for Paul Ruddy. And so I see her, and I'm just seeing her in like the squares of all the other young actors out here and just trying to learn. Fast forward, we're in the same audition room, like
2 weeks later.
Literally
very
2 weeks
soon,
later.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw me, but I walked into the room and saw you and immediately knew that I had just saw you beforehand. So I'm like, this is just such a like
Small industry.
Small industry.
Yeah.
It's a small world, large industry, but small world.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we saw each other at that audition, and then there was a round of callbacks as well,
Right.
which we were both at. And then they got rid of me after this round of callbacks. But somebody over here ended up booking the big thing, which we'll get to later because that's a big film. But before we get there, Bernard, I want to ask you just kind of how you fell into this business, where you're from.
Right.
How did you get here?
Okay, so I am originally from Chicago, Illinois, a small suburb actually right outside of it. And just growing up, I just fell in love with like the atmosphere and everything that came around, just like storytelling. And so it started there. And then it's funny because I have two specific shows that have encouraged me to like really pursue this and like push me in this. And it's The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody
Love.
and The Flash.
Okay.
Very
different.
Too drastic.
We grew up on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, though.
Exactly.
I was stalking your IMDb. You were born in 2001. Me too. So we for sure grew up on the same same shows.
Same,
that was a
same
good
degrees,
one.
exactly, same levels. But even then, it's just like I wasn't even interested in let me not say I wasn't interested, but I was interested in the actors and everything going on, but I was also just as interested in what was happening when the cameras would go off. And I'm like, they don't live at that hotel. Like that's not like, this is still a fictitious story and I love it and everybody loves it and we're tuning in and we're watching these kids grow. But like, what's going on when the cameras are off? And I was thinking about the people who are like behind with the mics and and thinking about all these different people behind the camera. And it was just a very interesting thing to think of what the life that they were setting up before us to film and to record in that, what it was like behind the scenes and how they would then interact with each other there.
You would think about that as a child. So you'd be watching the show and be like, somebody's recording them as they talk right now.
Literally. And it would just be like, I know that like this line specifically was probably so hard to finish because it's so funny for me. I know when they're reading it and they're interacting with one another, they're like cracking up and having to figure out how to like ground it so it's real. But it's also like, this is still just like a story being told before us that they're just writing and like living. Like these kids are just living in this hotel. And then The Flash, I remember The Flash ended with season 2 and it was Barry and Flashpoint. If you haven't watched it at this point, I'm sorry. We're going to spoil it. It's been like almost 10 years. It's been almost 10 years. But season 2 ended, Flashpoint, and I was like, oh my God, Barry, like, what are you doing? Like, I'm going through all the emotions as an audience member, just being like, what's Flashpoint? Like, you just ruined so much. What's going on? All this is crazy. And then at the end of it, after like 15 minutes, I was like, I want to make people feel the way I just felt. I want people to be thinking about the theories with the character. I want people to be thinking about all these different things with how other characters are then going to be influenced from somebody else's decision and how the story is going to be affected and all these different things. I was like, I want to make people feel this. like I want just people to go through that with the things that I do, and I want people to feel something with my work, my art.
I love that. I think that's a big reason a lot of us fall into acting is like we're so inspired by these people and we love the way that these films and these shows make us feel that we then want to give that feeling to other people, which is so special because and sometimes too, once you start working as an actor, it can feel not important. I don't know if you ever feel that, but sometimes I do like a commercial or a movie or something and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm just an actor, like I'm not doing much. But you have to remind yourself that like that art form of acting really does like change people's lives, and what we do is so important.
So important. And it's so interesting because like you said, you have those feelings of like, I'm not sure whether or not this is like hitting somebody or touching somebody. I just saw the commercial that you were in for a calendar on YouTube, and I was just like, yes. And I was like, she's doing the damn thing. She is out here in LA making it happen, working on these sets, meeting new people, making connections, and still trying to take care of herself and go with that. Yeah. And I still applaud you. Even then, I was still gonna say I want to thank her for bringing me here, because this is my first time being here and doing something like this. So even then, you're working and still in a way trying to uplift others and trying to give people a voice and do all these other things that you kind of have to do in this industry a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. But even then, you are making your strides and you're doing a lot. So
thank you so much, Bernard.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. And yeah, truly, I feel the same about you. The reason I asked you here is because I've been keeping my eye on you and seeing all the cool stuff you're doing. But yeah, it's a fun industry. And isn't that the best too? I have that a lot too, where I'm like in the gym and I look up and it's like my friend in a commercial. Like, it's so fun when you get to that point in LA where you're like seeing your friends all over. It's like,
just had another friend in a Coca-Cola commercial, and it was just like you meet these people through whether you meet one-on-one or you meet them through somebody else, and it's like, okay, I'm still supporting your journey. I'm still watching you, Aaliyah Banks. Good job, great job. But you're just watching these people and you're like, congratulations, keep going. You get that one and it feels good, and you go through the motions of, I got that. It must have been 7,000 no's to get this one yes.
Yes.
So now I gotta, buckle back down and keep going. But it's important to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you feel this way too, but I always find it so inspiring too. If I like see my friend in a commercial or something like that, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're working. We're doing the thing. Love it. Okay, so when did you like move out to LA? How did you come out here? What'd you study in college? Things like that.
So interesting story. I had literally never been on an airplane until I was like 17 years old. Okay. And it was to come out here to visit because I knew that I didn't want to do anything else. It was like that time at high school, like that right around that graduation time period where it was like, all right. Well, I should say beginning of senior year. It was like, all right, we're doing these college applications, and it's like, where are we going? What are you doing? And I genuinely didn't want to do anything else except come here and pursue my acting career. And even though I knew I was going to have to use my education as maybe a clutch for that, or as well as use that as a helping tool in order to pursue that, I knew that was what I needed to do graduating high school. That was where my heart was lying. So graduated high school, visited California in May, and moved here in August. Okay. And that was 2019.
2019. Oh, you just beat COVID, barely.
Literally just beat COVID. I had got out here in 2019, and it was my first time living across the country by myself and being in this environment where, like, it's on me now.
Yeah,
like,
so you moved out here at 18.
At 18.
Okay, I did the same thing, I know.
August 3rd was my birthday, and I moved out here August 27th.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
It's such like a culture shock too. Do you ever sometimes I think about that. I'm like, how did I move across the country when I was 18? Like, now that I'm older, I look back and I'm like how did I do that?
Yeah, we had a vision. No, and we knew we had something to do. And that's the thing. That's what pushed me, was for sure. Like, I know that, I had talked to my mother beforehand, and you go through like the different casting agencies on the radio. It's like, your kid wants to be a Disney star. And your kid wants to be a Nickelodeon star, and you go to the different castings and they're like, okay, $300 for us to sign up with you, and then after that $800 for classes, and then after that $200 for
$10,000 later. It's like, yeah, okay. There's so many of those things.
And my mom took me to one of those, and we experienced that, and that kind of discouraged her from wanting to really put me in that, because it's like, are they just trying to take advantage of me and my kid? Are they suck whatever they can out of me? And then let's say even then, we didn't have the immediate knowledge of like what the casting world looks like and what that even
In the Midwest, I almost feel for like the parents, because I think if my parents knew how to approach the acting thing, I also wanted to do it as a kid. I think they would have. I just think there's a lack of knowledge amongst parents, and especially parents in the Midwest, about like, I want to like do this for my kid. I know they could be good at it, but like, what do I, what do I even do? Yeah. And truthfully, I don't even know, like thinking about it now, I don't even really know how to like get a kid started in the business. I guess you get them an agent and things like that, but
it's like the headshots. You start with the headshots, and then you got to start with the different databases. And
but does a mom in Chicago know that?
No, like a mom in the Midwest, mom in
like what in the world?
Families just trying to take care of themselves day to day and make it check to check and trying to live, and then they come in and their kids are saying these big giant dreams of being in Los Angeles in the entertainment industry, and it's like, we got to cook dinner tonight. Like, we're worried about tomorrow morning. We got to get y'all to school tomorrow. We got to pay the bills and do this. And it's like, that was a very big thing that was on my heart that kind of discouraged us with pursuing that. So then that was maybe like 11 years old, and fast forward 6 years later, and I'm still like, I don't want to do anything else.
Yeah.
Like, this is me. This is for me. So moving out here was just like, I'm doing it now. I'm here. I'm ready for Bernard Timmons II to make his little step and his little foundation out here.
And he is. What were you studying in school?
I am studying theater arts.
Oh, okay. So and you went right into that the minute you got it here?
And it was interesting though, because even then, I'm like a theater adult. I'll say I'm not a theater kid. I'm a theater adult in the way that like I'm learning the plays now and learning everything now, because growing up, I'd say I was mostly focused on television and film. So even then I was inspired by that. But then you grow up and you start like trying to learn in a different way, and like I'm learning from the greats. Like I want to learn from Denzel and Viola and all these different people who, they talk about the craft in a way that is transformative and in a way that like you're like, whoa.
Yeah,
you went through that and like had to experience and break down those walls. So even then, you hear about how they went to Juilliard and did all these different. They started in theater and dug their way through theater. And I just didn't have that growing up. So I for sure wanted to come out here and start learning a foundational theater basis. So it's just like I'm able to have those different degrees and arcs, and it's a different way that you approach acting when you approach it with a theater mindset versus maybe film and television, because they're two different mediums.
No, I agree. Yeah. I think too, truly as an actor, if you love the craft of acting, most of us like both mediums, I feel like. And you're right. I think there is a different, like, there are different statuses of like actors. I feel like, you have certain actors that do the like CW, like social media thing. Then you have like the Viola Davises, the Denzels, the like Leonardo DiCaprios, like that degree of actor. And then there's like different stages. But what I've noticed is like those names, they always come from the theater. You're right. Those actors that are like the actors that like are really, really respected, less as like celebrities and more as like artists, are almost always from the theater.
And it's just an
Marlon
interesting
Brando, Daniel Day-Lewis.
It's just an interesting upbringing. And how you said even then, I think it's so interesting when we go into like the degrees and levels that we see actors and artists in, because even then The Flash was a CW show, and here I am talking about how that jump started my acting. But from Grant Gustin and Candace Patton, love y'all. I'm just shout out because I'm on this journey because of y'all. Even then, you just see the different complexities in those levels. How people can look at Leonardo DiCaprio and Viola and still feel those things, but then we have like our cheesy CW shows and our cheesy things that aren't on the same degrees as maybe something like Killers of the Flower Moon. You know, I'm not expecting to get the same feeling from Killers of the Flower Moon versus The Flash.
Of course.
Two completely
right. Yes. It's beautiful that they're different too, and I'm not crapping on that. They're just very different.
I want to agree. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
In the way that we can look at different levels of how we approach acting and the art versus how we absorb it and how it makes us feel.
Absolutely.
Because every single degree, and it goes into then, like, I think it's so interesting how actors have this feeling of being specific with their work. And I chase that sometimes, and I have to get myself out of like either feeling pretentious or feeling the need to chase a certain thing, because one, at the end of the day, a job is a job. So I got to get paid. The bills got to get paid. We got to put food on the table, keep the lights on. A job is a job. And then even on top of that, you have to find where you fit in. Because if you're not creating your own work, which you kind of have to do, you got to find out where you fit in. If you get in here and you get this opportunity, I got to go and I got to run with it, because this is my chance. And, you know, at the end of the day, if I'm not called back for day 2, I did all I can here and I get to sit down with that. But even then, it's just even kind of bringing it back, it's just interesting how we then give these different levels to the craft, but they all still make us feel something in these different ways.
Yes, and they're also important. It's funny, I would agree with you. I also was like originally inspired for sure by like CW shows and things like that. Of course, like Disney Channel starting off like Hannah Montana, Wizards of Waverly, like when I was a kid, Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. That was what I liked. Then it transitioned into like Gossip Girl, 90210, like that kind of thing, the CW shows. And then as I got older, that's when I started watching the like big films and the plays and really falling in love with that.
And it's so interesting too, because I don't want to say it's how we grew up, and it might be how we grew up and just the way we were raised and what we were exposed to. But then you hear like some people who are like 8 years old watching The Godfather, and it's like their magnum opus of what films are. And it's just so funny how you really do. It has to do with what you're exposed to, and what your interests are, and what you kind of feel you like at a certain age. Because some people were exposed to like heavy films like that at a young age, and it's curated down what they experienced in their adulthood, versus us who had. And I'm not saying they didn't have this, but versus us who are able to, or right now specifically identifying that growth versus, you know, children's television into like young adult programming, into like films. Yeah. Because films don't even necessarily, of course you're not looking at a film the same way you're looking at like Hannah Montana, where it's Waverly Place and these, it's children's television. So there's a story and there's an art to that, and it's unfolding and entertaining. But then you look at a film and it's just like a different world, you know? It's a setup, and depending on what the film is, it's just different.
Yeah. You know what I love too about a lot of those film actors, like Viola and Denzel, they got into that world when they were a little bit older too, which is always like inspiring to me, is that like, yeah, I don't know. Of course, there are people, you know, in their early 20s that are doing those big films, Jennifer Lawrence and Emma Stone and people like that. But I also do love hearing about those stories of people that kind of fell into it later in life. I always find that so inspiring. And then I feel like too, the older I get, the more I have in my tank and the more I can pull from, because I think about that sometimes. I'm like, as much as I'd love to be in like a big Oscar movie right now, I'm like, I don't know that I, to be honest, have enough depth inside of me at this current moment. Eventually, absolutely, but it's kind of a part of being an actor, I think too, is not limiting yourself, but maybe knowing what stage of your career you're at. So I feel like for me right now, a goal I'm more so pushing is CW's not doing regular shows anymore, but that type of thing, the like HBO, Netflix, those type of like young adult shows that a lot of the time use actors like us.
Exactly.
In like their early 20s and things like that. So that's kind of what I push myself towards, and then, you know, hoping one day it leads into something further. But
exactly. And it's so interesting how we are in this landscape of, like you said, where we're at in our career, because even then it's like you grow up, and now we're at the stage we're at where we are growing, and we're still trying to figure out who we are as people while still pursuing this art that is like at face value sometimes still being like, okay, they don't have the look, push them to the side. Okay, they don't have the look, push them to the side. They got the look. Now let's see what they offer. And that happens sometimes. I'm not saying it is always the case, but it is interesting to be growing and like still figuring out who you are while still being told like, okay, not yet, or not here, you're not there yet. Yeah. And just as much as how you say like the depth of the person and who they are, we jumped across the country. So who's to say that even then the people that we would have been 5 years ago growing up, maybe still at home and then coming out here, are the same people that we've been now and that are now getting into this now. Yeah. It's so interesting how we grow alongside our art and our work, because as you said, the depth of the person, their experiences, their traumas, what they've been through, what they like and what they don't like, as they discover still who they are and who they're becoming, that matters just as much as the art. And how you say we're trying to, not how we're trying to, but just the landscape of the market right now and what things are like and what's being pushed in the young adult world. It's so funny how, I don't want to say character actors are very much alive. And even then, it's so funny how certain actors are put in like certain, I don't want to say boxes, but just you look at them and there are kind of boxes. And you look at like, I'll bring up Zendaya, and how I was watching an article and how somebody called her like the next like girl next door, and like gave her the it girl, and she is absolutely the it girl. But girl next door is like that abbreviation title that you put on a type of role that they must be fit under and what they must look under. So then you look at her and you're trying to put her in these different, you know, romantic interest bouts instead of giving her the full character and the full depth. And like even in Doom 2, I see how her and Denny talked about giving Chani a full like a full depth.
Yeah.
And talk about making her a more full-fledged character instead of maybe that romantic interest girl next door that maybe the book may have been giving her the vibe.
Yeah.
They wanted to change that up a bit.
Yeah.
And so even then, personally, I have not done so much work just yet, and I'm dying to get to it. But people have asked me, like, okay, where do you see yourself? You started with a horror movie, or you started with this, you started with that, but where do you see yourself in your career, 10 years down the line? And I don't necessarily want to be an actor that, and I'm not saying that these people who I've mentioned, of course, are these absolute archetypes that have been put on them, because we're all still trying to figure out where we lie and what art we want to pursue, where we want to be. I want to be a villain today. I want to be a hero tomorrow. I want to be the supporting character that actually did the thing that he was saying he didn't do the whole time, or I want to be the lead character that's on the hunt trying to find out whatever we're going through or whatever the situation may be. I think giving us the room to still be any type of person is what's important. So I don't necessarily want to be boxed, of course. I don't think anybody wants to be boxed, but I also think it's important to, like you said, where you figure out in your life and where you are. It's just so interesting how how that curates itself.
Yeah, and it changes as well, as we age, as we get that life experience, obviously, as your look changes, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know it is interesting. And what a blessing it is, too, for people like us, I think, that started acting. Because, there are always those people that come to it later in life, whatever, even like in their early 20s, like weren't doing it prior to now. And I do feel really lucky that similar to you, like I was 18 and knew this is what I wanted to do, and I got to start really pursuing acting while also figuring myself out. So it's kind of like merging the two together and changing that. But I know there's a beauty in like knowing your type, and there's almost a beauty in getting boxed in, because you can book the same thing over and over. You know what I mean?
And then that's
but
the
then
part that's important as well, because bills got to get paid and stuff like that, and it's important because it's still a business. At the end of the day, this is still an industry where people are. The business comes before, the sets and everything like that. That's where we get to after we've discussed how much money is going to be put here and who's going to be all here, and how we divest the different departments and different monies that we have to spend on one specific project. It's insane.
Yeah. Sydney Sweeney got a lot of hate like about a year ago because she was talking about the money thing in the industry, and people were like roasting her for doing a lot of movies like that. What's that movie she just did with like
Madam
Glenn
Web?
Powell?
No, Anyone But You.
Yeah. Like people were roasting her for doing like movies like that. And literally in an article, she was like, "I got like bills to pay." Like,
but I almost want to go back and say that film, she produced that on her own. She was a part of the development of that. Got to star in it, and that's a whole nother level of just being like the actor in that. Like she got to build that from the ground up, which is incredible. And that's why it's so funny how people like to say like, you're an actor, you're visible, you should have the funds, or you should have whatever it may be that they think actors are supposed to have. Yeah. But like you just said, this is still a job. Once I do my job and I perform, I'm paid and I get to, call it a day. But that's it. I have to still manage to continue to move forward and build this career.
Another thing too, as an actor, is like the more money you make, the more expensive life gets. So like those actors, I don't know how true this is, but I read an article that said Sydney Sweeney's salary for the first season of Euphoria was $150,000, which I feel like might sound like a lot for a few months of work, but like we live in Los Angeles. Yeah. $150,000 here. No, truly. And like rent, like if you want a house, I don't know that anybody could buy a house in LA on $150K salary. I really don't think you could. Houses are like, it's like $1 million for a one-bedroom in Van Nuys.
You're living very comfortably in an apartment, maybe with a roommate for $150K.
Yeah,
in Los Angeles,
exactly, legitimately. So, and then like as you make more money, you got to pay out your PR, your lawyer, your agents, your managers. Yeah, so your standard of living changes so much. And then also as an actor, our work's inconsistent too. So it's like, you did this cool show. Are you gonna work afterwards for a few months? You don't know.
Exactly, and that's the fear with it a little bit. That comes with that. It's like, okay, I get to pursue this, and then I get this job. It's over now. What's next? Like people are like, okay, you did that. That was cool. Anything next coming up, or what you doing next? And I'm like, auditioning just like I was beforehand.
Right. It's like never. I know it's never ending. And then even when you are working, when you're on a project, you almost have to be thinking about the next project as well when you're on.
You're like, did I submit yesterday? I know they refreshed.
Yes, exactly. Which is why I always tell people, I'm like, you gotta love ultimately, I think you gotta love the craft if you're gonna do this, because the
100%.
business things are it's just too much. It's too hard. And if you don't love the craft and like remind yourself that that's why you do it, I couldn't do it. If I didn't really love the craft of acting, no way could I put up with the BS we put up with. If I didn't like the art form, yeah, F that. If I want to just get rich or something, I would do something totally different.
I would jump into a stable profession.
No, exactly.
This
yeah.
is an unstable profession at the end of the day, which is interesting to really like buckle down with and accept and still move forward in.
Yeah.
Because you, like you just said, the love is there. I wouldn't be doing this if waking up to a set isn't something that I dream about every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So speaking of waking up to a set, Bernard, I want to talk a little bit about the movie you did that just recently came out, right?
Yes, in February 13th.
February. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to give us the whole rundown of it? So
All
this
right.
is the audition that we met at that Bernard ended up booking. So you guys know. So
Thank you. Okay, well, I got to play a lead in the film called Seance Games. Seance Games Metaxu. Written and directed by Tani McClure. Co-written by Tani McClure and Tyke Cavarelli, and then directed by Tani. So this film was a blessing sent from heaven. It's about 4 social media stars who go to a haunted hotel, and they are putting on this seance game, Metaxu, and they are trying to win $1 million they're trying to put on the seance, and with the seances have to put on the scariest one in order to win $1 million. And
such a fun concept. Can
It's
I just
such
say
a
that
fun
the minute
concept.
like when I was auditioning and like read the script, I was like, man, that's so like timely. I feel like
I gotta be honest, and it's so funny. When I first got my audition and the first like description was there, I was like, I jumped into that pretentious mode.
oh,
I
okay.
did. I was like,
Social media
yeah, I was like social media
stars.
stars on TikTok and 600 million. I was like, this is kind of. But even then, like I said before, and you have to drop those pretentious thoughts. You have to drop those like, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if this sounds right because
I'm supposed to be
you
a
don't.
Denzel. I mean, I don't know.
And that's the thing. You have to you have to stop that. You have to be
Yeah.
open. You have to be willing to jump into things that even at first thought maybe I don't know if I'd see myself in that, because now here I am a year later and it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me in my entire life. So and it was just incredible. The people that I've met, starting with Tani McClure, Nisha Catron, Bonnie, now I have to name names and my mind is going blank. Linda Berger, everybody. Farrell. I'm just listing names now. It was just my co-stars and everybody who was a part of it. It was just incredible in the way that we came together. It's a non-union film, so even in that, like I was speaking business and speaking those type of terms, they did pre-production, I think, for about 8 months prior to casting.
Yeah.
And then they did casting, and we started filming, I think, like a month and a half after that.
A quick turnaround.
A very quick turnaround. And we started filming on April 3rd, and that was just like the best 2 weeks I could have ever asked for in a set like that. Everybody came to set willing to learn, willing to hear others and their perspectives, and then even then still take in all these different thoughts from each other. And in the way that we're connecting, that work is then shown on screen and shown in the way that we're able to have people working in all these different departments, but it's flowing so beautifully.
Yeah. No, I love that. So you guys shot for 2 weeks, you said. Okay.
Yes.
So like 14 days straight.
So we shot for 5 days in Pure Blossom. 6 days,
okay.
actually, I apologize. 6 days in Pure Blossom, and then we drove up to Sun Valley in the desert and got a few scenes out there. And it was just like the sights, especially the house that we filmed in was actually burned. Like had been actually like, it had actually survived a fire and was still like charred, like all the wood that was actually falling apart. There was like one door that he was, I said, director Eric was like, do not lean on this. You will fall into the basement. Like, so it was cool to be in that atmosphere, learning it just as much as our characters were. Because when you start the film, our characters haven't been to this place, just found it. So us as the actors still learning one another and learning this environment, it's all like all blending into one, which is very cool.
Yeah, that's so fun. Can I ask, was this your first like quote unquote bigger film you had done?
Yeah, my first feature, my first lead in something like this. I have done a short film. My first like anything hired that I got to do was a short film for the Calvin Brothers in 2021.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it was about it's titled Boys of Earth. And it was about a child who had committed suicide and his friend who was kind of reliving the events of the funeral.
Oh, wow.
And it was very sentimental in the way that I was just thankful that I was, seen in that way where someone wanted to grab me and, I represented something very, very powerful for him in his life. And that was just being able to be seen in that way and then come and put on the work. And he was telling me I was doing a good job. And, it's funny when you come to set because wanting to do a good job is such a interesting thing where you don't want to push yourself over the limit of like, I'm obsessing over it. I just have to hit it right. You gotta, for me personally, now I'm saying you, but I'm really me. You really gotta calm down and like sit in the moment and allow things to kind of you just have to be present in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it is easy to show up with those people-pleasing tendencies that so many of us actors have, but you're right. The minute you do that, the minute you get in your head like, oh, am I making this face? Am I doing this? Like, I feel like my performance is always shot. You have to be so grounded and not think about that stuff.
And it was so interesting with the way we shot this film because it's Tani's vision, and I love it so much. We were shooting, and Tani's way of filming, especially this film, she wanted us to be in the moment with each other and not be focused on like, am I making this face? Am I being this loud? And it was really like, okay. And this goes into the bit of the theater studying that I said I wanted to do because in theater, especially with who I learned this from, one of my first acting teachers, he just said start at 100. And start at 100 and work your way down and figure out the different degrees and levels that your character is at. Because if you're starting from 0 and trying to climb up and pull this out here and there, like it's very hard to. You're stressing yourself. You're pushing and you're straining. So start with everything you got and then sculpt it down and figure out where you want to be. And she was able to do that. That's where that's at least the method that I took with filming this. I tried to start at 100 with where my character was at and where he would be feeling different peaks, of course. And then Tanya was like, okay. It's a ghost, not like a knife entering you. Like this is not like this is like still like the paranormal. You're not like being jammed and then not being killed or anything. So kind of like it was interesting to have that performance sculpted down into what her vision was and where we could like meet on that common ground.
No, I love that. What surprised you the most about being on a film set like that? Like, what was the most surprising thing about the whole experience?
The most surprising thing about being on a film set like this, I think, would be just the knowledge of what it takes. I think I grew up and I, of course, didn't know much about what the whole setup and what the process comes to even creating something like this. And even to this day, I see myself as a writer and as a director and as these big titles that carry these projects that we love. So even in that, there's so much that goes into this stuff. There's so much.
We're such a small part of it, which is so funny because when you're an actor, right, doesn't it feel like everything revolves around you? I feel
they're like, is the actor okay? Are you good? Was the talent?
Yeah.
Do you need water? Do they need water? Do you need this? Do you need that? But then they have 8 other tabs open, a phone call to make, and a script revision to make because
the 8 months before they even hired you guys that they were like prepping everything,
and
like the
scening
actors
and
are
still
really,
writing. No, keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just like the actors were really like the smallest part. There's so many moving parts to a set.
So just of course, the absorbing of knowledge from Tani and from everybody who was there and their experiences. But of course, I try my best to be a sponge in these type of situations. I feel like I'm kind of running on. I talk kind of fast, and I like to get my story out, but even then I try to keep 2 ears open to just what other people have been through in their experiences, because you don't know what you can hear from somebody that changes the way you think or changes the way you approach an idea or changes the way you approach life, even in that matter. So I was really just glad to be on a set where I was learning. It was surprising in the way that I was just absorbing it all for the first time, but it was still just incredible to be hearing. And I thank, of course, my director and everybody who was open with us and sharing that information with us, just so they know, like, we're happy you guys are here, but it took time to get here. We had to handle this and get this situated, and we're happy everything is here. But it's hard, and it's not an easy feat to get anything done. I should say specifically to get a film done. Yeah.
How did you approach your character? Because you had 6 weeks to prep it or something.
So I approached him in a very lighthearted manner.
Can you give them like a brief description of your character?
So my character Steven in the film, he is the brains of the group. He is the person who kind of brings the technology and well, I should say he brings the Wi-Fi and he brings the lights, and he's making sure everything is settled for everybody. And that's kind of his persona in the way that he carries himself. He likes to make sure that he's coming across as like this, you know, not necessarily like put together, well-mannered guy, but like I got it. I got the map. I thought of this and I thought of this, and I'm trying my best to be infused in this makeup situation with my friends, because even in the character, Steven is like not all the way believing that something's gonna happen here. He's just like, I'm just happy to be out with my friends.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be doing something, and then the shit hits the fan. And that's and it was it was so much fun to even think about what a character would go through in a situation like this. That's where the fun and the playfulness comes in, where you get to, you know, say this idea doesn't work and say, okay, this worked, and play in just what makes up a person.
Yeah. No, that is so fun. Did you guys have time to like rehearse and do table reads and stuff?
So
before? No?
we actually had 2 table reads. We had 2 table reads, and in those table reads, we got our costuming and things like that done as well. So it was very much like not rushed, but we got casted. We had our table reads, and then it was kind of like everybody do the preparation and kind of get ready, because when we start. We got 2 weeks, and we're in
Most
it.
films, I know, which is so funny because again, I feel like as an actor, you think like when you think of movies, you think you have all this time to prepare, and it seems so glamorous and slow. And I know, and then
it's
you
like,
get into it, and it's like, nah, man, this is a business, and we gotta go.
Literally, we would
Time
get to
is
set,
money.
We would get time is money. We would get to set, and it would be like, okay, we're trying this set for 3, or we're trying this take for 3 times, and then we gotta go. We can't spend all day on. Not only do we not have the money, I think it's not effective. I kind of agree with that tactic of trying to pull something out of an actor in a scene multiple times, take after take, and you're not hitting that beat, and it feels hard.
Yeah.
So it's I would like that approach of, let's try it. Let's get something that doesn't work, and kind of just stick to that. I almost want to say it's hard to. I love the idea of reshoots. The reshoots seem so much fun in the way that you get to come back and try something again. But you're not always granted that. That luxury. I will say it's a luxury to come to recreate a whole moment in what it was 2 months prior, whatever the case may have been. But in that time that we had, we put our feet on the ground and we got to it.
Yeah. No, I love what you said about it not being effective to keep doing it, because I totally agree with that. I think with creativity, a lot of the time when you put certain parameters on it, such as time, that's when you get the best stuff out of it. It's sometimes when you let it, because us creatives, we can just keep going and going sometimes, and sometimes I just keep going. I do it with self-tapes sometimes too, where I got to be like, okay, I'm at a point now where it's like, 3 times max for me for self-tapes, because I'll just keep going and making it weird. And it's like, Sophie, nothing's happening. You're just making it weird.
I had one self-tape specifically where it was 5 different takes. And at each point,
5 different.
I did 5 different takes for one scene. Oh, you like what were you?
I thought maybe you meant 5 different scenes. I was like, oh, that's a lot. 5 different takes for one scene. I got you.
Yeah, I had 5 different takes for one scene, and I'm being that perfectionist in my head where I'm like, okay, well, I do this at mark 30 seconds and I like that, but I don't do that at 45 seconds here, and I'm like upset that the things aren't all piecing together.
Maybe I should just edit together.
If only.
I know.
But it's that release that you have to have. You have to put your all into it, go through it, and make a decision, and then know that if it's not for you, it's not for you.
Yeah.
And what's for you is on its way to you. You got to really throw it to the wall, and what sticks will be what sticks.
Yeah, that is genuinely the mindset that always keeps me going in this business, is what's meant for you finds you, and no one can take that away.
That part.
Like, I so wholeheartedly believe that about any role in this business. Like, if I don't book it, wonderful, because that role wasn't meant for me, and what's meant for me does come. And I've seen it in my own life. Like, what does come for me always feels right, and what doesn't.
Exactly.
So,
and I even want to say this. It's so funny how we talked beforehand about already the depth of life that you have to bring to different characters and different roles. A big show that inspires me, I've already mentioned her, but Euphoria is just something that really, really shaped the way that it changed the way I see filmmaking in a way, and changed the way that I was able to really tackle character development and the way just things make you feel. I'm in love with cinematography and the way that I was 17 when that show came out, and being hit with everything that was just coming through that show. I had never had depression relayed through me in a medium like that. I had never had just certain things in that show. I was like, that's what that's a vision that I've been needing, and then I saw it, and I was felt fulfilled in a couple things just in the art of that filmmaking, the art of that creation. I was just like, I gotta be there. I have to be on that set. I gotta
And
get
then
there somehow.
can we talk about how you did end up being there, right? You mentioned earlier.
I did, and I got to be there. I would literally just be like, I just have to work on the show in any capacity.
Yeah.
Just to even be there and to see those phenomenal artists at work and just see how they play and how they see what doesn't work and see what works and how they go into that. There was a casting call at first, actually, at the beginning of 2020 when they first started season 2. COVID happened. I missed the audition and I was a mess and I was just like, no, like this was my chance and I blew it. And I was in that
got
like
an audition and you missed it.
So it was a nationwide audition.
Oh, okay.
And then what happened was I was in Midwestern time, and then the casting network for the show, or the casting agency for the show, was on Eastern Standard Time. So I missed the time to upload my audition at the last minute.
Oh my
I was
gosh.
just
Wait,
like,
so you'd already filmed it and stuff? Oh, that's the worst.
all done. I'm uploading it. I realized what the time was, and like the Wi-Fi's going slow, and I'm like, hurry up! And it just time passed, and I couldn't upload
What's meant for you finds you.
What's meant for you finds you, and then. Missed it. COVID happened, and then literally a year later, I believe they did another casting call for the role that Dominic Fike got. Congratulations to him, killed it. And even then, it was just I got a call back for that. But in the world that I was in, being back home in Chicago, had not filmed anything. I was just in a completely. I had gone from like college student back to like Sun during that pandemic era, and it was a very weird adjustment to even be seen in a room like that. I didn't care whether or not I had booked it at that point. And you gotta keep the faith strong. You can't let stuff go when you get to certain things.
Getting a callback for that is no small thing. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
Because I'm especially for open call auditions like that.
Nationwide, and they were like, "Let's see him again." I was flabbergasted. I was like, I can't even believe this just happened. But I was so in that mindset. I kind of let it get to me, and I didn't really have the focus that I had going into it, and I kind of let that like fantasy of it all kind of hit me a little bit. So, but also, what's not for me is not for me.
Yes, which I do believe, but I also believe too that like we can learn from experiences too. Because I do say that what's meant for you finds you, but there are equally times for me as well where I've done an audition and I'm like, that wasn't my best, and maybe had I done better, things could have turned.
Exactly.
But you learn from it as well, and everything does work out. But
100%. So fast forward, they're in the middle of season 2. A casting. I worked background on a couple shows. That's how I actually got my start out here. I worked with Central Casting, or signed up with them, and got to work on my first show ever working background was The Amazing Adventures of Ashley Garcia. It got one season on Netflix. I remember that. My grandma was sending me like, "Bernard's my grandson right there," and like it was that moment of like being on TV for the first time.
No,
that was my
so
first time
fun.
being on TV, and it was very like I came out here. I had just moved to California. It was only like 2 months, and it was wild. But Central Casting, I got to go through background with them for a couple shows, and just that feeling of being on set and being a sponge to that absorption of knowledge, and being on time, being early to your set times, to your call times, and seeing what people are doing beforehand, and then just seeing how all of the work blends on a day. That was just my first experience to this industry, and I thank the Lord that I got to be able to be a third person perspective to that, because how we were just saying, I don't know what I would have been like jumping in immediately and kind of being number 3 on the call sheet or number 2 or something like that. I had
book a series regular and you're like, but you've never been on a set before. And
there's certain things you got to learn, and I got to learn a set etiquette that I got to observe besides just being directly in. And so that was very important for me. Fast forward. I know tangent. I apologize.
No, you're good. No, I love that. Actually, I do want to stop you there because that's something I always tell people for beginner actors: do background work. I think some people crap on it. I don't know about you, but I have some friends that are like, no, I would never do background work, but they're new actors. I'm like, you should do background work. You get paid a little bit of money. You get to watch a third person perspective. You're on sets you would never be on otherwise. I did background work as well and learned a lot just watching, learning the different terms and things like that.
Absolutely.
I think it's so good. And then, like we discussed as well, a lot of the time you're not ready right away to be on a big set. Like I would have, I'm sure you could learn, and this industry's crazy. So some people probably will book their series regular or whatever, but
congratulations. What's meant for you is meant for you. What's meant, you're going to learn your experiences and learn your lessons with the things that come to you and that you're open to grabbing, and that, if it's an opportunity for you that you want to say yes to, it's before you say yes, go at it. So it's also that fight of like accepting that, your time just isn't there yet. Maybe there are some things and some lessons that you have to go through in order to be at a point later, and you had that moment of like, damn, I don't know. what I would have done with this, or how I would
Yeah.
have responded to this or reacted to this, because I hadn't been through this lesson yet, or hadn't experienced this moment in my life yet.
Yeah, and all of our journeys are so different too, which is so fun. But I know it's also too. I just think it's nice to like look back on, like, oh, back when I was doing background work when I was
Literally.
out here, which is no shame to it, but it's just a great way to learn.
It's a great way to learn. So even then, like, I'm jumping back to the story, like, got a central casting call from them, and it was for like a theater, just a regular theater audience member. And so I was like, okay, I just got asked to be on my favorite show. I'm ecstatic just to even be here in the atmosphere of going through the auditions and going through that. I'm here, and I get to be around people and observe in a way that I'm observing my favorite television show being made. Like, that's just an experience that everybody doesn't get to say they have, and I have to take that in and absorb that and take my moment. And so I get there. Me and this woman start talking. We're having a good time. It's like 7:30 in the morning, but I'm still cheerful and happy to even just be present. And so one of the guys, I forget if he was a PA or if he was actually one of the, like, on set, just somebody more than, not say more than a PA, but just one of the PAs if he had a different label. But he came up to us and he goes, stage manager to me, and then makeup artist to the woman standing beside me, and then just walks away. And we're like, okay, like, whatever that means.
Some stage, right?
Like, I guess I am. Yeah, I have been before. But I was like, okay. So then 20 minutes goes by. We're in our attire for the audience members. He comes back to us and he's like, hey, I did not call you two guys. What did I say? And I was like, stage manager, makeup artist. Go change into something for the backstage crew. You're going to help Lexi put on the play. And I was just like, that's an upgrade from audience member. Like, I'm going to take this and yes, sir, and go.
So you were like upgraded from just like regular background to like featured background
Yeah.
kind of role? Oh, nice. Okay.
And so that one day was not supposed to be, I guess, just they had been calling people back for the audience members, but then I got upgraded and then became a part of the core background. So, like, even then there's scenes of me on there. Like, I have screenshots of just me being on that show and then having the feelings prior to, and then seeing that I got to be on it and learn from these people in this capacity and just be, like I said again, just a sponge to the knowledge and how much excitement it was. It was one of the best moments of my life. Even just like I said before, being there was all I wanted, and I got that. And it's like you said, nobody can take that from me.
How do you get through the hard days in this business? What keeps you going?
Woo! The hard days. The hard days are very, very hard. It is very interesting to be on a path where I was not born into this. It's something that I found a love for and a passion for, and that makes my heart beat, and that makes me literally want to get up and strive to find the next thing so that I can go and, you know, be on a set and have a good time. And just as much as it is a passion, it's a business. And then thinking about that as well, how you have to present, how you have to show up even when you're not feeling up to it, how you have to still at the end of the day, you know, go to bed and be happy with your decisions and everything that you're pursuing and what you're doing. I think reminding yourself why you're doing what you're doing is so important. And I think there are some days where you're like, damn, that was a good audition. Like, damn, I didn't hear anything back, or I felt that and I love that. But I'm not going to, we've been saying it the whole podcast, but just kind of knowing what's for me is for me keeps me going.
Yeah.
And I'm in that period right now personally where, you know, the bills got to get paid. You know, I'm working jobs and I'm trying to, you know, take care of myself as a growing young adult, but then also as a artist who is pursuing opportunities.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting to be in that position where as an actor, you are waiting for stuff to be presented to you and you're pursuing that and you're going after that. And so even right now, I'll say something that's very specifically helping me is opening myself up to the different mediums of art, whether that be writing, whether that be cinematography, or whether that be, because those are my two loves but adding to acting, which is my first. But even then, there are just so many different ways to express yourself and so many ways to get out the feelings that you have in your head and these different doubts and insecurities and things that you go through while still having to, like you say, show up to these auditions and show up in a way that, you know, you get to throw everything away for 30 minutes to an hour and then focus in on, you know, this character, this person that you get to bring to life. So genuinely just reminding myself why I'm doing it, why I'm here, and the love I have for it is my main pusher. I grew up wanting to move to California so bad, just with the sun, the water, and the atmosphere, and it. Once you're able to look back and see how far you've come, it's very interesting to be like, damn, like wait, I'm doing like the things that I was really dreaming about and wanting to do as a child. Yeah, and I'm in that. So I have to, on the days where I get depressed and I'm up and around, I gotta remember that kid literally wanted to be here.
Yeah, 11-year-old Bernard at the Disney Channel thing, but like you're in a movie that's on Apple TV
like,
and things like that. What does little Bernard think of that, right? So it's like, and I know, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's like we can minimize our like actor accolades when we're at like, when we're not Denzel's or whatever. It can feel like, oh, I'm just in like a horror movie. And it's like, yeah, but you're in a horror movie on Apple TV that's won like 35 awards. And like, think back to the, the little you. So
no, genuinely. And it's so funny too. I never thought I was going to be in a horror film just because I had stayed away from them for so long. I'd watched Chucky at 5 and was like, absolutely not. Like, I just don't think that's not happening for me. I'm not in that. They can have the scary movies. And then the first thing I do, non-spoiler alert, we're working with blood, we're working with all these different things. I'm doing everything that I've ever wanted to do on one set. There's stunts, we're having emotional moments and peaks. I'm seeing the director having these emotional moments with these actors, and it's like, wait, this is my set.
Yeah, and I almost turned this down. No, right?
No, and
you said you first read it.
And I had those thoughts, and I was pretentious, and I was being a little baby about the opportunities that were being presented to me, which is why I say too, you gotta remain open. You may have those doubts, and I said it because it's so funny how I feel like we may just approach things immediately with like our own perspective and our own thoughts and how we may have either seen something or how we took it in, but you just don't know what's lying before you. You have to be able to be flexible, and able to be teachable, and you have to be able to just be, I keep saying it, just open to these experiences in which you don't know what could happen before you. I don't know where I'd be at with the people that I've met in my life now, and they've given me such comfort in such times of downness. Yeah. And times where I was like, damn, I don't really know what I'm how I'm feeling right now. And those people that I looked at with at the project where I was like, I have now been anchors in my life. So it's just about remaining open. It's about being able to throw away any preconceived thoughts and allowing stuff to allowing things to come to you as they are. Yeah. And not whatever you think they may be or whatever you were thinking previously.
Yeah, no, I love that. I do think a lot of actors, we get in this bubble where it's like, or you maybe do one big project, so then it's like you think you can only do
I didn't even have a big project.
Big,
so like I was being pretentious. I didn't have a big project. Like I'm still auditioning, I'm still doing things left and right, and I'm still having these thoughts where I'm like, I hear other actors talk about how they curate their career and how they like they're very specific with the things they pick, and then they talk about like Taylor Russell, who I'm so inspired by. I watched Waves the first year I moved to California, and that movie. I met Kelvin Harrison Jr. and Alexa Demi, two people who inspired me very deeply, and like talking to them after that movie and seeing that, as a child, 18 was just like, it shapes the way you want to move forward and how it inspires you. So even in that, hold on, bring me back. I'm sorry, I tangented.
No, we were talking about how some actors like curate their careers, but then some actors are very open.
So even in seeing a film like that, and it's like it's the A24 great, like emotional, meaty projects that you want to do. And, it came to them because it was for them. It was their time to have that opportunity. And so I think in that it's just about, I keep saying be open, but you just don't know what's for you.
No, that's so true. And one thing leads to another out here too. So like sometimes I've even said yes to things, same as you, where it's like I'm just kind of like, I'm just going to take this and see. And then it ends up being a really, really good experience. So it's like you just don't know. And I also think too, like as long as it's like safe and things like that, like you always learn from experiences too. And work begets work out here as well. Exactly. Like you meet really cool people who go on to do really cool things. Exactly. And so, I know I'm the same way. I do have this, of course, like dream career in my head, but it's so funny. Very few things I feel like on my dream career path have happened, yet I still feel very fulfilled because the opportunities have been like so random and so fun and so funky.
And that's the thing, we shape out in our minds what's supposed to happen, and then something happens and you're like, I didn't think about that, but I don't want to be the person I was prior to that experience. Like, I love the fact that I have that
Yeah.
to me now, and I get to add that to my repertoire, to the depth of who I will bring of me to the next character and to the next job. And it's just, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. We are coming to a close here a little bit, but I do want to ask you about the photography thing a little bit, because I know that's something you're pursuing lately, and we always talk about on here trying to find ways to make money outside of acting that are still flexible and still fun, just because obviously it's such an inconsistent career.
Literally. So yeah, photography has always been something I've loved. I love the way pictures, images, film and television, the way they make you feel, the way something is angled and its composition and the way everything is just lined up. And so I think I have a vision, you know? I feel like I have a vision, and that goes into the directing that I want to do and the type of writing that I want to do. But even then, I feel like right now, starting with capturing just still moments and being able to identify like the livelihood in still moments is what I need right now. I'm a very fast-paced person. I talk really fast. I've been doing it this whole interview. Forgive me. But I'm constantly at like chaos speed moving.
That's a lot of us creators. I feel like, why do we thrive off of chaos? Which is a little bit good for us, though, because I don't know that you can be in this industry if you don't thrive off chaos a little bit. Like, you have to kind of love it because it is a chaotic
You have to be very
industry. But
adaptable
anyway,
as well.
You do, yeah.
You know, things go awry all the time.
Yeah.
Something could blow up or set on fire, and you got to figure out how to maneuver around that in your schedule. Or somebody came up sick, and you got to figure out how to maneuver around that. There are just so many different variables that could go awry that you have to be adaptable and flexible to.
Yeah.
And so just making sure that now I have a camera and I'm pursuing just I don't want to say expertise, but I'm pursuing my love in that.
Yeah.
It's something that I've always chased, and something that I've just, now that I have a camera, now that it's tangible for me, I have to like push myself and remind myself, wait, I have a camera. Like, I need to go out and be doing things. And like, I just had a photo shoot with a friend a couple weeks ago.
Fun.
And just even being able to do those small things where I'm exercising that muscle and I'm able to do, you know, kind of what I want to be doing. It's like that reminder that I'm out here and I'm doing what I need to be.
Yeah.
And even right now, I'm mentoring under a phenomenal photographer. Francesco Da Vinci is his name. And being able to just learn from somebody who, like you said before, just the depth. It's so interesting learning from people who have these experiences. You have to be able to like close your mouth for a second and just listen to these different moments in people's lives where you're like, oh my God, like you survived that, like good shit. Like, can I curse? Like, is that okay? Like,
Okay,
it's like
yeah.
good. Like you hear these moments that people go through, and you're like phenomenal. And there's so much to learn from him. He's a photographer. He shot Halle Berry and shot her transition into the star that we know now. And he's been on these different sets and doing his own things, and people come to him, and it's just interesting to learn from the people who have done the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
You have to be, I keep saying the same repeated things. I'm trying not to sound like a
No,
broken
it's good.
record.
It's
but
good. It'll
you gotta
stick in our
keep
heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just gotta, you gotta have your ears open. You gotta be a sponge to the knowledge.
Yeah.
And I'm trying my best to be right now.
No, I love that. And I love what you said about learning from people that are where you want to be. That's something I've always been a big believer in, especially even when it comes to like acting classes and things like that. I won't just take a class from anybody. Like, I take acting classes from people that I think are like working actors or that like have kind of the accolades that I want to have. Because I think if you're going to learn from people, they should be people that are, like you said, doing what you want to do.
I agree. And even to add on to that, I love how you're specific with that, because I have a friend who's in school. She relates to me the experience where her acting teacher was just spitting the most vile things at these students,
So many
learners of the craft.
Theaters, so many theater colleges do that. I dropped out of theater school for that reason.
I don't blame you,
because I knew like what they were saying. I was spending all this money, and I was like, y'all have never even worked as an actor. Like, you went to this university, you did this theater program, and now you teach here. Like, what have you done in the industry? Nothing.
Literally. And at that point, it's like you've done, nothing or one thing, and you're berating these people who are just trying to be, who are literally revealing themselves to you and trying to be vulnerable. Vulnerable is a word that I haven't said too much here that I wish I would have mentioned more as it comes out. But being vulnerable is so important here, because even then, to tangent and bring it back, the way you present yourself, the way you show up to these auditions, and the way you have to, they want to work. People want to work with good people.
Yeah.
And that matters just as much as the work you do in the character versus how you approach the relationships with these people you want to be on set working with.
Yeah.
And so then to come back, it's like, how can I learn in this environment and it'd be productive for everyone when you spew these nasty things?
Yeah.
It's so crazy to me. And that was my first time having a friend relay that experience to me. I'm so blessed to be able to say every set that I've worked on so far, background included, blessing. Good. Nobody was awful. Nobody was like having a hot-headed moment. Nobody was being controlling, because that's not the experience for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's not. And I'm very thankful to say that that's mine.
Yeah. I think, too, those situations are more rare than they are common, which is good, but equally they do happen. Okay, we are closing out here, so I'm curious. Do you have any advice for... Let's go back a few years ago to young Bernard, just moving out to LA. What would you tell him to prepare him for the journey of the past few years?
I would tell young Bernard who... I'm a little stuffed, excuse me. I would tell young Bernard who just moved out to LA to stay focused, stay persistent. And I say that because I moved out here, and school and my career have been my two things to juggle. And in that like it sounds minute, but it's felt very heavy.
Actually, can I ask you, how have you balanced that being in theater school and then also auditioning? Because when I first moved out here a couple years ago, I was in theater school and auditioning. I did it for a year. And then I dropped out because the auditions, and I started booking, and I didn't feel like I needed school so much. But I was dying, Bernard. Like, both. Being a full-time student and also
it's
auditioning.
Insane. It is insane because I'm in the course right now where I'm getting all of my gen eds done still, and then once I get out of there, I'll still only have like most of like the theater requirements to finish once I get to a bachelor's degree.
Gen eds, man.
Oh, the gen eds.
No.
I'll even throw myself under the bus here. It took me 3 times to get through math. I'm an actor for a reason. School and education is so important. I don't want to minimize the importance of it, especially if you have the love for it. Go after it.
Yeah. There are for sure cons to our education system. I know.
Absolutely, but I'm choosing a passion, and I'm choosing an industry where the work is like the education.
Yeah.
You can learn it and be in class all day long, but like, what are you doing on the ground? What are you doing? Like, are you writing? Are you making little short films and making little videos like that? Because you can learn it and hear it from somebody all day long, but when it comes time to do it now, are you going to have the tools to then execute?
Yeah.
Because it's very interesting, and that's why I love that I've started with the theater. I'll say that because I didn't have it growing up.
Yes.
And so being in love with this film and television and wanting to jump into it, not having the craft experiences, I got to build from the ground up, literally, with starting with theater and then figuring out how that trickles. But even then, to the film or to the balancing school and balancing theater school and auditions, it's just interesting because when I first started, for sure, pre-COVID, I would just be hoping that I would get like the background notices on days where I didn't have to go to school, or like I would be like, "Hey teacher, like I just got a job," or like I have to go to Ben I's today for work. Like, can I miss it? Like, can I catch up later? And then COVID happened. I left California for a year and a half, came back, and then I moved back to Chicago during that period. I came back August 2021, and then got right back into the background thing, but it became that like, okay, I have to figure out how to like juggle where to get background here and where to do auditions here because I got in-person classes. Yeah. It just becomes this like, it's a tussle that you got to work your way through in order to kind of really understand it. I understand wholeheartedly. Excuse me. I'm like, I want to finish, but I'm like, I want to just start working and feel the passion and feel the love for what I'm doing. But at the same time, we talked about it beforehand, bills got to get paid, certain things like that. So I feel like I've made it this far where I'm like,
no, you're so close at this point in college. Stick it out, my man. Did you pass math the third time?
I did.
Okay, good.
So that's what I'm saying.
Third time's the charm, see?
Every class for me up until math was like golden. I got to meet people and it was great. And then even during this period, I was doing auditions, was in a play, and was in a math class. And it was the most insane period of my life. I like look back and I'm like, how did...
I know. There are seasons of life where it's like you're just like in grind mode and you get through, but I know you come out of it and it's like,
I was living day to day in that.
Right, I know. And people ask you, like, how did you get through that? And sometimes I'm like, I must have been on autopilot because I don't really know how I got through that.
A mix of autopilot and like, I know I'm meant for bigger.
Yeah,
I know bigger is on the way.
It's just a season, yeah.
I know it's just a season. This too shall pass,
That's
and
what I remind
I'm
myself.
clawing and I'm grinding and I'm gnawing for what I want
Yeah.
and what I'm chasing.
And those seasons too, again, you learn so much and it adds depth to you as a person too, which I always think like life experience makes you the best actor. So like it's not for nothing. All of
Exactly.
our life experience always ends up helping us. But yeah. Do you have any tips on how you balance all of that for maybe any actors out there with crazy schedules? Anything you do practically to kind of balance
I
it
would
all?
say to balance it all, to make sure you're taking care of yourself. I feel like it's so easy to jump into a busy schedule, and it's so easy, and it, I don't want to say it's so easy, but we just get caught up in the everyday chaos of life.
Yeah.
You know, you would socialize here, audition here, or work here, and we get so caught up in just like the everyday chaos. To really give yourself a moment to sit down and feel your grounding, and to just like feel your feet on the ground.
Yeah.
And just to have a moment of stillness. It does so much more than you may think. I have those moments too where I'm spiraling. I'm like, oh, like I got this here, 8 tabs open, and then I go for a 20-minute walk, and I'm like, whoa, like I love this little life.
Right. And it reminds me that like life's not that deep because we get so, especially as actors too, it just feels like everything is so chaotic and like we're doing so much and like life is crazy. But I feel like you go for a walk and I'm like, oh, there's a whole world out there.
There's a
like,
whole
I'm not
world
the only
out
person
there.
that exists. That's usually what it is for me is I'm like, oh, my life is actually not really that big of a thing. And I'm just putting stress on myself for no reason.
And that's why I thank you for inviting me here, because even then I see the work you're doing. You talk about me and the work I'm doing, and I want to extend the same thing to you with the podcast, with auditioning consistently, working consistently, because you be working.
Thank you.
You be working, and you make it happen. So it's even like just I don't want to say the imposter syndrome starts coming in when you start having things happen, but even then,
does,
it absolutely,
for all of us. Yeah,
absolutely.
I know. And then I don't know if you feel this too, but I feel like too, again, when you're at this level of acting, then I get mad at myself for having imposter syndrome because I'm like, you're not even like big. So then it's like, I don't know, this weird balance.
It
But
is
I think
really,
all of
really
us
weird.
actors, we have that.
And then I had this moment even with seance games where I was like, did she pick the right person? Like, is this what I'm meant to be doing?
Is this a
But then-
joke?
Is this
Is somebody gonna
literally-
come out and like
exactly? And then it's like, no, I've been putting in the work. I
Mm-hmm.
want to be here. She picked somebody that she saw did the work for the character. Be a good person. Being a good person will like be respectful. Be mindful of just people's of manners and
Yeah.
of the way you approach people. It goes a really, really long way that people don't always think.
Yeah, and we want to work with cool people too. That's the thing. It's the same thing with actors. We all want to work with good people, and it's also cool to work with the same people over and over. Like you
So
get to
cool.
a point where it's like,
So
yeah,
cool.
where like the same casting directors are bringing you back, the same producers. Part of the reason I'm able to work so consistently, specifically commercially, is I'm just with a lot of production companies that have worked with me before, so they get new clients and they just bring me back, right? Because you build these relationships, and it's like they want to work
Exactly.
with somebody they know is reliable. I want to work with them because I had a great time too. So it's like
You always hear
all
from
about
casting directors
relationships.
they want to see you do a good job.
Yeah.
They want to see you
Yeah.
succeed. Like as much as they're working, they want to see you working too. Like everybody wants everybody to be uplifted and succeeding. But when somebody comes across you, like, you didn't get my audition. It's not framed the right way. How you don't like that? Or they just there's an energy that sometimes people bring to something that somebody else is doing for you.
Yeah, 100%. I know that's like when the actors get, and I get it. People ask a lot of us sometimes, but like, yeah, it's what we do is such a blessing.
And
remember-
what we do is a lot sometimes too. We
Yes,
as
yeah.
self tapers, we are the lighting, the audio,
it
the
is,
actor,
yeah.
the director.
Yep.
You
They
stack
keep
it up.
they keep asking more and more of us and paying us less and less. And I'm not gonna lie, I know.
Let's talk about it.
It is one of those things, especially in the non-union world. This will be something I talk about more in the future, but I've seen there's some contracts going underway about changing things non-union wise, like setting up some more regulations and like specific things to protect us as non-union actors in terms of our rates.
Wonderful
There's
to
certain
hear.
organizations popping up and things like that. It is, yeah. It is really wonderful. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. But gosh, even SAG, sometimes their rates are not you know, anyway.
Now
In a pandemic, we just started
In
out
a
here at a weird time.
pandemic.
I gotta remind myself that too. Those of you in like your early 20s who like have only been doing this for a few years, we really jumped into this at a rough time. I gotta remind myself of that sometimes too when like things get hard. Not to make excuses, but like bloody hell, we really did jump in at a weird time.
Let's
like
really
I
be
wonder
real
what it was
about
like
it.
10 years ago.
And
when
people
things
say
were
that all to me
normal,
people say that to me all the time, especially people who, and it's interesting how it's like the trickle effects of everything that's been happening like goes into people who aren't that well versed in the world of entertainment versus who are, because even then I have some people who are like, you know, it's kind of slow right now, huh, in the entertainment world. You know, things aren't moving like how you said. 23-7 is insane. Is that what you said? That's insane. I didn't know that statistic.
Yeah, there's this platform called Casting About. It's like $10
I've
bucks.
seen it.
Okay,
So you're on there?
Yeah, I am, because you
I
see
need to go on-
everything
I
that's
need to go on
filming
there
in
so
LA.
bad.
It's so eye opening. So eye opening and nice to see. But
But no, yeah, just that you're sorry, we tangented. But
No, it's
when you're an
good.
actor and you're waiting for opportunities, that's kind of it. So you have
which
to
is
be
why you got to pick up something else like photography or just another creative endeavor to make money. So you're not just so focused on
and
this
even
thing
then, just
so
as
you
long as
live.
just as with making money, just if you have art to get out.
Yeah.
I am going through such a interesting phase in my life where pandemic, young adults. I moved out to California at 2019, moved back to Chicago, and then had to like relearn and regrow, which is very interesting because
I didn't realize you moved away for so long. That is kind of like you get a taste of this world, but then you go back
6
to
months.
And the Midwest is so different. Even when I go back for Christmas, it's like I just view it so differently now, and it's so good, and like it grounds me a little bit. But I'm
Yeah.
like, man, is it a different world
It's a
over there?
completely different world.
Different energy, all the things.
You
so.
come out here and you're like, damn, I'm in California. Like the palm tree already from LAX, and you're like, damn, the water's down the street, and it's just a
The
different
energy's so different too, just like of the people here and
100%.
everything.
I would say Chicago's like a toned down New York in the way that like even in Chicago, like we be about our business. You know, we trying to go complete our tasks. You know, we may see somebody, we wave, we do a little head nod, and we keep going, and it's focused. So it's like when I go back out there, and the entertainment industry is starting to wake up a bit out there. I have a friend that I grew up with who's on Power, and I'm so proud of him. And I'm Lucian Cambrick, name to watch out for. But so proud of him and seeing everything that he's doing and how his career is going. But he stayed home. You know, that was his path and what he was
Yeah.
meant to do. So that's me boosting
So
the
he's
Chicago
acting
entertainment
in
industry.
Chicago.
Yeah,
Okay,
Power
cool.
Films out there.
Yeah.
And so the Chicago industry is growing.
I did a film out there last year, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, for like 4 days. They like flew us out and put us up for a little indie thing. Yeah, there is some stuff going on out there, huh? I still
They're
have an
trying to grow.
agent in the Midwest. I have an agent
Good.
they're out of Detroit, but they do that whole Ohio.
And so even in me, I
Illinois.
don't even have a Midwest agent, and that's something.
Oh, get on that.
The way I entered here, I literally was just like, California just seems to be the foundation. So I left out this little part too. I have a family friend, Renee Washington. She was a manager for her children. They were in Step Up 2, and they have different credits and different things along that, but they were mostly acting as children. And so even then, I was able to reach out to her. So I didn't even like traditionally do like the like.
Getting a manager kind of thing. So she took you on right away.
So she took me on right away because she was a family friend, and she's
Nice.
like, we had these headshots. You want to be an actor, but you don't got
that's
no
so
headshots.
nice,
You gotta
Renee.
get
So
the
she
ball
was
rolling.
able to kind of
Connect
take you
me.
under her
I got
wing. That's so
Sandy,
nice. Sandy Lisi?
Sandy. I love you. I'm only forgetting your last name. The business. It was Sandy something photography, but that's who I
Okay.
went to. And she took. I told you, whenever it's time for me to name stuff,
No, I get
it's
it.
gone. But I'll be walking down the street and I can tell you who was
Yeah.
here at this
We'll
time
come
during
back
this.
to it.
Like,
They know who they are.
But Stephen Young,
Oh, okay.
the person who took my headshots, who did Stephen Young's headshots. So even off the bat, I was so lucky to have somebody who was doing the work and had it done already pull me in and be like, let me get you here and let me tell you this and tell you that. So then when it was time for me to come out to California, it was like, damn, I have a little bit. I'm not completely blind, but let's start small.
Yeah.
And then I had a friend in the acting class who was doing central casting, and I'm like, she was on the Amazon show Us.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, how are you on there? She was like, central casting. And that's how from that moment in 2019, fast forward, get to be on a show that I love deeply. And so even in that, like, there's just this, you got to be willing to share the knowledge and be willing to
Yeah.
bring in people when they express these things to you. Because just as much now, I feel like there's a little bit of a lack of opportunity. We're in a weird space in the industry where there is a lack of opportunity. You still got to be able to make it. You got to be able to write. You got to make it on your own. You got to be able to write what you want to see, write what you want to do. But even in that, there's just as much of a lack of resources sometimes. You have people with these big, giant, gorgeous ideas.
What do you do with that? Right, I know.
Well, how do you like?
And getting investors and all of that can be so messy. Also, making a film is so expensive. It adds up so quickly. Like, even I feel like I used to think $100,000 for a film. I was like, yeah, that sounds good. That's nothing. Like, literally nothing. I just did a project. Their budget was $300,000 and still penny pinching left and right because they had to. I know it's craziness.
I know, getting stuff left and right. You know, we need this makeup artist to get this tool here. You know, they ran out of this product. We got to make up for it here. Something happens on set that we didn't plan for.
Yeah.
So now we have to make up for that. It's I don't even know. It's just a handful.
It is.
It's such a handful. So even then, everybody's listening. If you're a filmmaker, on top of that, thank you. You know, this is a heavy thing to do, and you know, sharing your art is also no easy feat. You know, especially when it's personal and it comes from somewhere. It's easy to, and I say this because as somebody who wants to write things he hasn't seen and bring that out of him, it's easy to judge things at first glance, but when you then go back and like, I wonder what that person had to go through in order to experience writing that. Yeah. And bring certain things up and have these different topics to challenge and to talk about. It's just, you know, art is subjective, all for us to challenge and be critiqueful of, but then just as much as we're critiquing, you know, that came from a passionate place, you hope, and you want to think. Not for everything per se, but, you know, for most things.
Art is so subjective, too, that, like, sometimes I read something and I'm like, or I watch something and I'm like, but then somebody else loves it. So that's, like, kind of the funny thing about
And it changed their whole perspective in the way they thought about
and
approaching
I'm
something.
like,
Or
okay, hey, man, like
I almost turned it off halfway, but if what rocks your boat, if you like it, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Okay, Bernard. So our final segment is called Fast Frisky 5. So I'm going to hit you with
Say it one more time.
Fast Frisky 5.
Fast Frisky 5. I love it.
So it's 5 rapid fire questions that require a lot of thought. So that's the key. So they don't usually end up being rapid fire, but we can try. Favorite quote. I don't know if this would be your favorite quote, but something I feel like we keep talking about is like, what's meant for you finds you, being open.
I have said that a lot, and no, that is an important quote. I'll say that because I don't even know where I've heard that originally, and I've said it a lot during this podcast, but I keep saying it. What's for you is for you. What's meant for you is for you, and it's on its way to you. It's something that I just had to live by in a way that, like you say, in the hard days and being like, oh, I didn't get this, or I didn't get this, but what if it was somebody else's catapult? Right. What if somebody else
could have been a hell set for you? Yeah.
It could have been. So what is for you is for you. I love that quote. It's something that I really wish I could credit. I wish I could credit somebody with that.
But I know. I've heard it before too, but I don't know where. Is there something in LA that you love that not a lot of people know about? Like, what's your go-to place? Maybe a coffee shop, a thrift store. What's your sanctuary?
I love Shinsengumi. And I have to promote it. I'm like, I love it so much. Literally every single time I go there, 10 out of 10 meal. I love ramen. I grew up on noodles. So even then making the transition from somebody who grew up on ramen to like having actual ramen, it's my comfort meal. I go there and it's 10 out of 10 every single time. I talk to all the waiters. I have like, they see me. They're like, hey, Bernard. I'm like, hey Sammy. Like, I love them. So even then coming here and just being exposed, it's a culture shock from the Midwest to California. You're exposed to so many other things that if you're in the Midwest and not actively pursuing those things, because not to say they're not there and they don't exist, but if you're not like, you know, you get caught up in your own world or what you grew up in or anything like that, coming out here, it's just removed me from being comfortable in what I originally knew. Yeah. So tangent back to getting real ramen, and I love Shinsengumi. It's my best ramen spot.
Do you have a favorite line in a movie that comes to mind, or show?
Can I change the question from favorite line to like a favorite episode?
Do it.
Season 1, episode 7 of Euphoria, and I keep going back to that. I apologize, but I don't think as a young adult, 17, I had ever seen depression or checking the recording. No, it's important.
It is recording. Yeah, I know. I randomly get the fear sometimes. I'm like,
You're like, oh, this entire thing was not been going
know.
on. No, we've been having a good conversation. I'm happy you brought me. But I had never had depression or anxiety relayed or done in that manner. And anxiety is something I feel like I've been dealing with, I would say, like since high school. We all start to deal with that at a certain amount of time. Growing, but not even high school, like just growing up. I feel like in certain environments, in certain atmospheres, I just didn't know how to bring myself to the table.
Yeah, you don't even realize it's anxiety, I think, sometimes as a kid. Like, I look back on it and I would get a stomachache every single day on the way to school. And, like, later on in life, I, like, processed through with my therapist. That was, like, anxiety. I was anxious to go to
Literally,
school.
your
like, I
body
didn't
just
like it.
responding to everything. And
Yeah.
it's like, damn. And so, like, just having the anxieties of growing up, trying to see where you fit in here and there. And then for my Chicago people, you know what the experience was like growing up in between, like, the 2008 to 2016 era. It's societal stuff, societal standards, and all these different things that you feel like you kind of have to amount up to, or you fall privy to, that you think you are amounting to, or things of just that nature that I just feel like I felt drowned in. I feel like I was drowning in it. It was one of those things where I grew up as somebody who's always been, like, people see me as extroverted and out and, like, having a great time, and just someone who doesn't approach life with anxiety. But I'd be, like, at home, like trying to figure out how to show up with a smile the next day. And it'd be one of those things where it's kind of like you don't think it, because I'm not automatically foreshowing it. I'm not automatically presenting to you that I am nervous that I'm going to say something wrong and, do something wrong, or do something wrong in the way that, like, you just don't know what to expect from people. But it's just anxiety with social situations and things of that nature. Fast forwarding to just now and having to bring me back. I'm sorry, I started tangenting.
So it was, like, favorite line in movie, but we made it favorite episode.
Thank you.
Yep.
I had never had an episode or TV show or anything kind of just relay that high school experience of like your days bleeding together and things just like chaotically falling apart but together in the same way. Euphoria premiered right when I was exiting high school, so it's interesting to kind of look at that and then be looking at that as looking at my personal experience from high school and then like shaping that to what I was watching, just because you start to compare a little bit. You like, that's real, that's